So I'm originally from San Francisco Bay Area. My parents were divorced when I was young, so I split my time between the city of Berkeley and the city of Richmond. And in both locations, there weren't a whole lot of Filipinos, from what I knew. So that kind of paved my way into my passion today of trying to understand my roots and everything. At the age of 4, I actually started Aikido in the city of Canoa under Sensei Lou DeSena. So from age 4 to age 12, for 8 years, I did strictly Aikido. When I was in junior high, I started seeing a lot of fights. I started seeing boxers and wrestlers, right? And it was the boxers that scared me. Because I grew up wrestling with like my cousins, my older brother, you know, who had some background and whatnot. So I wasn't too scared about the wrestlers, so to speak. It was the boxers that scared me. And so when I asked my Aikido instructors, hey, what do I do against a boxer? They gave me an answer that didn't sit well with me. So I decided I wanted to venture and look at other options. From then on, for the next 8 years, I dabbled in Muay Thai, did a little Taekwondo, did a little Karate, did a little Jiu-Jitsu, did a little, you name it. If it was around, I tried dabbling in it to see what it was about. But I always had this void that I could never fill, right? I could never explain it until my stepfather introduced me to Filipino martial arts. And the way he introduced me was, my stepfather's from the Philippines, and he didn't learn Filipino martial arts till he was here. So he was training under Maestro Sandy Umpad and Grandmaster Robert Castro at the same time. So he would go from one class to the next class, and then he would come home and want to practice. And since he knew I was dabbling in different martial arts, and he knew me from Aikido and everything, he's like, here, do this for me, do that for me, and he would just practice on me. And so I would learn inadvertently the 2 different systems without even knowing which system was what. After 2 years of training with just him at home, he finally convinced me to train formally. But I told him I would only pick one school because I need to focus on one thing. So I went to Grandmaster Robert Castro's garage one day, and I got hooked once I saw the guntings. And it was the empty hand guntings that was the answer to the question I could never fill. And basically the question was, in all these other systems, I'm usually the smaller guy. So what do I do to even up the playing field? I can't always be tougher than someone. I can't always be in better fitness than someone. And then I understood the gunting to be, you know, defanging the snake, taking away the arms, like, oh, that makes sense. Start chipping away at them, right? And then it made sense to me, all the weapon stuff that I had learned earlier. And then by the time I hit 20, I was officially training under Grandmaster Robert Castro, and through my FMA time, I've been able to train and dabble in many different styles of FMA to increase my understanding. About 6 years ago, I was asked to teach a kids program, and I never thought I would teach a kids program. I actually never thought I would teach publicly. I was always very modest about that. I have relatives to this day that probably don't even know I train and do what I do. So basically, in working with the kids, got me to realize that I'm starting to develop a program that I wish I had as a kid. Because when I was working with these kids for the first time, I was giving them tidbits that I had learned about history, about culture, about a writing style, you name it, right? And I saw the beam in their eyes that they really liked this stuff. And I was like, and I realized like, this is what I wanted as a kid. Because growing up, I never actually identified as Filipino. Growing up, I had no reason to be proud to be Filipino. No one ever gave me any real history of what Filipinos did and, you know, did in this world and to be proud of. And so now that I have that knowledge, I try to pass it on. To get into FMA on a personal journey was for me to get connected to my roots. I don't understand the language, because I didn't grow up around a lot of Filipinos, and it was a way for me to learn about my ancestors. And because of FMA, I've learned quite a bit. And in working with the kids, it got me to realize that, oh, I have this knowledge, and I'm able to put this program together where I can pass it on to the kids and anyone else that wishes to learn that aspect of the culture. And then when COVID hit, we had to go strictly online. And that's when we had to change gears about curriculum, because usually speaking, we work a lot of disarms, locks, and takedowns, but you can't do that online, right? So I had to look back into my repertoire of what flows do I remember and what else can I bring to the table in an online setting, and yet still produce people and to get them to learn something new and useful. And so what happened was, after being online and then developing the program, I started to realize that I think this is something that could work. And it wasn't until this last April, May, where I pulled the trigger. Because, you know, the grand opening is June 11th, 2022, and rebranded everything to the new program. In terms of Eskrima and in terms of the Science Style Corte Cadena, you have these two heads of those organizations that bring in their knowledge from many different FMA styles. So they themselves are a hybrid system of themselves. And since I come from both of them, I have a lens of both sides, and I can see how they complement each other really well. So my thought process is, I take the main base of each system and make them complement each other in a way that it makes sense to me. Like in Eskrima, the main base is Serrata and Kumatan, right? And we can go pretty seamlessly between those two. In Visayan, you have more of the moral style, right? And if you look at Master Sunny's lineage, you'll see that he's trained and dabbled with almost everyone out there as well. But he mainly focused in on like the longer sticks, more larger model range, whatnot. And I'm a firm believer that for us to be as versatile as possible, we have to be able to understand each range as much as possible, right? Where we go from long range, medio, corto, the ground, right? And everything in between with all the weapons. So that's where Legacy comes into play. It's my 20 plus years of learning FMA and piecing together the pieces of how would one style defeat another style, and how can this style counter that style, right? And trying to figure out, okay, this is what's gonna make us the most versatile, let's train as such, right? Because that's the whole evolution of FMA, right? It's like we see different things from different styles, like, oh, that's really cool, let's learn it. And let's see if we can either improve on it or try to counter it, or at least have a better understanding of it. And that's what we're about, okay, from the art side of things. I fire 1, 2, hit whatever you can. All right, 3. If you think about all of the people that we trained with, most people have trained with someone who trained with someone who trained with someone else, but within each step, they added to the program. They evolved it, or they created it to fit their needs and their goals and their vision. So Legacy is actually following the footsteps of the people that I've trained with, right? So my Grandmaster Robert Castro, he trained with Angel Cabales and Great Grandmaster Presas, right? Then those two people created their own system based on what they were taught. So it's just like the natural progression of things. Master Sonny Umpa did the same thing. Whoever he trained with, he created his own, right? So it only makes sense that we follow in the footsteps of those that came before us, but always give credit back to them. And in fact, if you look at our logo, this tattoo symbol is actually on my Grandmaster Robert Castro's arm. So it's continuing on in his footsteps, right? But with a different feel, because I also want to focus in on the history, the music, the cultural aspect of it. Which is why if you look around the school, you'll see, informational placards about the weapons, the musical instruments. You'll see a library, books here. You'll see stuff written in English and Baybayin and Tagalog, right? And you'll see historical figures everywhere around here, because I think that completes the whole package of learning Filipino martial arts. Is you can't just learn that aspect of it. And I also want to implement first aid as well. So I'm kind of taking it in a slightly different direction based on what I would have wanted as a kid growing up. As a kid, I said I never identified as Filipino because I had nothing to be proud of. Once Manny Pacquiao came on scene, everyone was proud of him, right? But then you have to ask the question, like, who came before him, right? And if you can identify different historical figures, heroes, heroines within your own culture, it makes you proud to be part of that culture. And I think everyone should have a sense of pride from whatever ethnicity they come from. There's always someone in every ethnicity. In the Filipino realm, most people only know about Lapu-Lapu Jose Rizal, for the most part, right? A lot of people don't know about like Gabriel Silong, right? And all the other boxers that came before Manny Pacquiao and how they paved the way for us today. And I believe that to learn the system, learn Filipino martial arts, you should be aware of certain tidbits regarding its history. When you learn a Japanese style or Korean style, Chinese style, you're counting in their system, you're learning their system, you're learning their words, right? We do the same thing here. We count in Tagalog, right? We do commands in Tagalog. And when people test to be ranked in our system, they're gonna have to know certain historical tidbits, right? They don't have to know everything, but as long as they know certain basic stuff. So certain basic grammar in Tagalog, how to write their own name in Baybayin. I mean, I'm not asking anyone to be, totally fluent in Tagalog or fluent in Baybayin, because I'm still working on it. I think they're actually all connected. The name Legacy denotes the understanding of this should live on beyond me. And the goal is for anyone that wishes to learn the Filipino martial art system, I want them to be able to know as much as they can about the system, the lineage, where it comes from, the characteristics, as well as the history and culture behind it that's tied in with it, and to be able to pass it on to the next generation. Because too many times have I been approached by someone telling me that they train Filipino martial arts only to show me something that isn't Filipino martial arts. It was just taught by a Filipino. It's not Filipino martial arts. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, I learned Kali, and I ask them, oh, so what style or what else do you know about it? And they don't know anything. And I think that's kind of sad. And I'm trying to fix that. The other thing that really irks me is when systems take from Filipino martial arts, rebrand it, and don't give credit back to where it came from. Right? I can understand creating a new name, but you've got to be able to give credit back to where it came from. Don't rebrand it and try to pass it off as your own innovation, right? So like when I teach, I'll show my understanding of what is traditional Kumantan, what is traditional Strata, what is traditional Kali, what is Escavo, what is Visayan style Corte Cadena, but then I also show how I understand it, how it can fit together. Yeah, that happens in all systems. I think that also happens in all industries. It's not just exclusively for Filipino martial arts. I've heard it done in all other systems as well. And that's why, it's great that you're documenting this at FMA Pulse, because it's coming straight from the source, right? That way, it's a reference point for other people. So it's a way to prove or disprove what someone says and doesn't say, right? Because there has been a lot of stealing going on throughout the years. I'm sure you know that. And just my goal is, I don't care if you take/innovate from someone else, but I do care that if you don't give credit back to wherever it came from, where it started from. That's just my thing. I believe FMA is still behind the game of all the other systems because of ourselves, first and foremost. All the infighting within the Filipino islands and amongst the Filipino people itself, the crab mentality amongst ourselves is what's keeping us down, right? There's no reason why we shouldn't be as popular and as known as all the other martial arts out there. We're just as effective as all of them, right? All these martial arts exist for a reason because they survived wartime. So they're still around. But I believe it was all of the, oh no, my style is better than your style, or I'm not gonna help you promote it, I'm gonna talk crap about you, right? I think that infighting is one of the major reasons as to why FMA isn't where it could be. Another thing, though, is FMA is so versatile. There is no standard, so to speak, across the board amongst a lot of different FMA systems, because some FMA systems, they don't use sticks. Some only use knives. Some don't use weapons at all. Some are pure ground. Some prefer the staff. Some prefer the short stick. Don't ever use the long stick. Some never do double stick, right? So how do you standardize such a vast multitude of different systems? You don't. I think the best thing that FMA can do as a whole is to not bash each other, to promote each other. And if someone comes to you and is looking for something that you can't give them, refer them to whoever is focusing on that. Right? Like if they want to do double stick system, then if you know someone that does a double stick system, your job, your obligation is to actually refer them to that person versus saying, oh, double stick doesn't work because you never walk around with 2 sticks, or we're better because of X, Y, and Z. And in my time, in my 20 years of seeing FMA, I've seen it go from people bashing each other's system, to more helping each other. I believe that I've seen a change in the mentality of the next generation of people that are supposed to carry the candle of FMA, and I think we're more in line to help each other versus the old generation. No disrespect to the old generation, it's just just different mentalities. This day and age, we don't have death matches anymore. I can understand, if you're playing devil's advocate, I can understand why certain grandmasters from the old times wouldn't share certain things because they had to protect themselves. Like, yeah, but we're not in that time. We're not in wartime right now.
Are you a big proponent of pressure testing and sparring?
Pressure testing, yes. Yes. We're going to get into more sparring. It's been difficult trying to get sparring gear with this whole, shipping crisis. So I think I'm just going to pull the trigger and tell people to get their own equipment. But I have to create a list of certain brands that they can bring in, because I don't want someone coming in with some street knockoff so then they get hurt. My perspective on Filipino martial arts is, yes, it is very versatile, but the person has to understand what has a high chance of success and what doesn't, because we're very artistic people, and there's a lot of stuff out there that may or may not work. So when I teach, I always tell people, this is this base model, this is the standard, this has a high probability of success. Once you get this down, then yeah, we can start playing around with it. Where could it go from the arts side of things, or where could it go if you're really good, this person really sucks, right? But if all that other stuff fails, if the fancy, flashy, fun stuff, artsy side fails, you revert back to the basic of the basics. And that's where I mainly focus on. Whereas, some people prefer to focus in on the higher end of the martial arts side of things, which is great, right? But I'm the type of person where if you're training with me and you get into some sort of altercation and you couldn't defend yourself adequately, I take that to heart. That's my fault, right? Whereas if you're a person that comes to me and only wants to learn fancy smanchy stuff and you get beat up in the street, that's kind of on you, right? But I also wouldn't teach you just that. I'm gonna go from the base. So yeah, because I work with kids and I don't want them to try something out there only to get hurt. I think people's priorities are different in life, and depending on what your priorities are and what you want to learn today, so be it. Just be happy with it. But like you said, when it's go time, it's what you've trained and your mentality, that's what's gonna be put out when you try it.